Hi, I'm Skip Nipper. Welcome to Skip's Corner, the podcast where I tell you about not only Nashville's great baseball history and traditions,
shot to right, a one-hop liner,
but certainly about its past. And you will hear a little bit about its present and future, too.
Yes, he can, and makes the waist-high catch.
There are great stories about Tom Wilson Park, Herschel Greer Stadium, Sulphur Dell, and the players, coaches, and fans who love everything about baseball. And every once in a while, you will get to hear from a special guest who will share their fondness and even passion for the great game.
The high fly ball down the right field corner, going way back, hits a lead-off home run.
For all of you joining us today, I want to introduce you to somebody that I'm really excited about having on my podcast. Now, if you've been a listener of mine, you understand that my podcast title is about Nashville baseball history. But I do say in the introduction, past, present, and you may hear a little bit about the future too. And we may cover all of those things today with Bob Hale, particularly about present in the state of Major League Baseball and the future of Major League Baseball. And we'll get into not only Nashville, but we'll talk about other things too. Bob Hale is from Towson, Maryland. He started a Facebook group page called MLB Expansion. And if you're on Facebook, go to it because I think it's fascinating. And he'll tell us a little bit more about that. I think he started not quite 2 years ago, and he's got a ton of people that are part of that group. So, Bob, welcome to my podcast. Skip. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for.
I'm glad I'm here, and by the end of the podcast, I may start speaking with a Tennessee dialect because it grows on me. I've been going down to Tennessee for about 18 years now. We have close family down in Nashville.
Yeah,
and so I'm a fan of Tennessee and a fan of Nashville. Just to give you a little bit of information about us, I have a background in publishing and marketing, and I own my own company for a decade. And I also had the fortune to work for a Major League Baseball team. I worked for the Baltimore Orioles, and I had a really good position there. I was the assistant to the owner of the Orioles. Around the time, this was in 1990, 91, and 92. So what does that mean? Well, that was the year that Camden Yards opened, 1992. So we were definitely the center of the baseball world then when Oriole Park at Camden Yards opened. Everybody in baseball wanted to visit, wanted a tour, wanted to be part of the party. And I had the fortune of taking a lot of the visiting owners from Major League Baseball around and showing them what we did. And I think it influenced a lot of current owners and future owners. For example, we had some executives from the Colorado Rockies who hadn't even played a game yet, but yet they were planning, they had just been given a expansion team back then in 1991, and they were going to start playing in 1993. So they were planning Coors Field. And if you visit many of the fields around the country, you'll see the influence that Camden Yards did, the baseball-only kind of classic ballpark. So it was great to be part of that. As far as baseball goes, I've been a fan since the 1960s. And Skip, as you know, the 1960s were the decade of expansion. 1969, 4 teams came into the league, and they radically realigned it with divisions and everything. And I just found it fascinating ever since I was a kid about Major League Baseball expansion. I think a baseball team does more to a city as far as civic pride. If you talk to many of the old timers growing up here in Baltimore, Maryland, Baltimore felt like a minor league city for many years. And it wasn't until 1954 when the Orioles came here that we felt like we had major league status. We've always felt inferior between Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. but as the old timers will say, getting, a Major League Baseball team meant a lot to the citizens. So it's very important for any community. We have 10,000 members now, and we have been growing very fast of late on the Facebook group, MLB Expansion. And once in a while, we'll get somebody that says, you know what, we don't need expansion. We have too many teams, or it's fine the way it is.
I've seen that.
I'll look at their profile and it will say New York Mets.
Of course.
And I'll think, well, if it wasn't for MLB expansion, the Mets wouldn't exist, because that's the reason we're all here. They were the first team announced back in 1960. So I just think it would do a world of good for the community, for the fans, and for the economy. I remember going to an economic development meeting about the 1993 All-Star game that was coming to Baltimore, because they had the new stadium and the millions and millions of dollars that were generated just because people were coming in for that one game. Right. And on the flip side of that, I remember the baseball strike. There were people were being laid off because their company printed some supplies that were used by the hotels for the visitors that were going to the game. Yeah. So
there's still people that are upset about that to this day.
And I'm one of them.
I get it. I understand. Well, let me ask you a question. How did the Facebook group page grow so fast? Tell me when you started that, 2023?
Yes, I started it in May of 2023, and there was one member, and that was me. And I started doing a post or two a day, and it just grew. People kind of organically. I didn't pay for anything. I didn't, force it on anybody. Limited sharing, but pretty much organically by people sharing with each other. Yeah. And then you see, I kind of see what days of the week, what times of the day, what topics, what visual images, how concise. It's just kind of a nice rhythm about, I'll be out walking the dog and something will pop in my head and I'll go, that'd be a neat topic.
Of course.
And people have told me that.
Well, you've done a great job with what you remain topical, because you change as you will it to, where I see people that post on there their monument to the four best players or whoever comes to mind for a certain city, Milwaukee or whoever. There are lots and lots of opinions about which cities should be part of expansion in the future at some point. There are some faults with those, but there's some awful good arguments about those cities also, right?
Absolutely. And I've always been impressed by the literary ability of some of our members. Right. Very sharp people. And I try to double check and triple check my accuracy.
Yeah.
I schedule things when I write a post. I just start to go send. It's got to marinate. I double check it, triple. But when I make mistakes and somebody says, Bob, that's wrong, it was this, not that, I fix it right away.
I've seen that you've done that a time or two. Yeah, not very often. And I'm not on there all the time, but you get so many posts.
Right. I'm a proponent of accuracy. That's very important. And we have a good group. You can't get anything by them. I don't try. Right. And they will tell me, a lot of sharp people like yourself. I just want to tell the audience a little bit. I had a meeting down at the Nashville Star's office, and I know you're the historian. You're part of the Nashville Star's potential Major League expansion franchise. Right. So I'm excited watching what you do, and I think you have a great organization. But the thing they said there is contact Skip. And they said he would be a great resource. And I said, well, he's a member of our group. Yeah. So, and I know you're an author, and you're the historian for the Nashville Sounds.
Yeah.
The AAA Sounds.
I'm not on the payroll for either one.
But I hear you. The website and the history of Nashville baseball going back, including the Negro Leagues, is wonderful.
Yeah,
And
nice to see.
they're they're lucky to have you.
Oh,
And I think that, you'll be a part of the major league experience if it moves in that direction. I think we need expansion. And you and I have talked before. Right now, Skip, there's an odd number of teams in each league, 15 in the American and 15 in the National. There's an odd number of divisions in each league, three, and there's an odd number of teams in each division.
of course,
It's
makes all
amazing.
kinds of sense.
It doesn't make sense. 32 is a beautiful number. As the commissioner said recently, for scheduling purposes, fours are easier than fives, which leads me to think they want to do like the NFL model, 32 teams, 8 divisions, 4 teams per division. Now, others have suggested, why not do it 18 divisions and have 4 of them? And then you get to 32 that way, because for many years, up until 1960, there were 8 teams in the league. So you could have a first place team and an 8th place team. Now, the worst you could do is 4th place if we go through that. The next expansion, and it will be happening soon, the next major league expansion will be actually a doubling of where we started in 1960. We started with 16 teams. Now we're going to be going to 32. The commissioner is waiting for Tampa and the Athletics to resolve their stadium.
Well, that's what he says.
Yes, that's what he says.
Yeah.
And he's been pretty consistent with that. And I think he's taking his orders from the owners. So the owners, they're concerned, Skip, with value of their franchise. Yeah. And they want to make sure that, they leverage these new ballparks with possibly, a new market. Right. If things don't work out in St. Petersburg, we're going to call Nashville.
Right.
So that rather than give Nashville the expansion team, but I think the mayor and the town council are being very choosy, because when the owner of the White Sox went there last December, he went there to talk to the mayor of Nashville about, maybe the White Sox relocating, which is a possibility.
I don't believe that. I'm sorry to disagree with you. I don't believe I don't believe the Major League Baseball is going to let the White Sox move out of Chicago. Certainly not without Chicago being an expansion team. That's just my opinion too.
Well, the Athletics moved out of the Bay Area.
Yeah, I understand that, but they've also moved out of Philadelphia and other areas. An interesting point to that,
Louis and Philadelphia and New York.
Right, sure, yeah. An interesting point to that White Sox, though, the first professional Negro Leagues team in 1920 was the Nashville White Sox. They became the Nashville Elite Giants the next season, and from there ultimately to Baltimore. But I thought that was kind of a key kickback to what happened in the old days. It was the White Sox. So I'm not sure that holds any weight with what might happen. Yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it?
Well, when you see old pictures of the Negro Leagues, you see a lot of Comiskey Park in the background.
Yeah.
Right. The Chicago
no doubt.
Was big
East-West games. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Big deal.
And
sure.
I'm glad that the Nashville Stars are paying a tribute to the Negro Leagues, and
commendable. That is very commendable. I think, for that group. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you're probably right about the White Sox. I mean, my grandparents were from Chicago. 3 out of 4 grandparents are from Chicago, but the demographics are changing. People are retiring. They're working remotely. They're moving to the South. They're moving elsewhere. And, there are the Cubs there. I mean, Chicago only has 1 NFL team. They used to have 3 professional football teams. So.
Right. Yeah. And going back to the Stars, an expansion or relocation. I appreciate what you said about me. I just want it to happen so that I can go to a game. Right now, my back is hurting. and I just want to live long enough to go to I'll actually tell you this. I'm a New York Yankees fan, have been since my 10th birthday. I stood by them. I watch them. I keep up with them. I want to go to a Nashville Stars game when the Yankees come to town and take off my Yankees jersey for the last time and put on my Stars jersey forever. And that's a dream of mine. A little bit of a dream, I guess, more of a dream than anything. But I would really like to do that one day. And not in the handicap section. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Not in the bleachers. I want to be in the ballpark and watch that.
When my son was born, I had this vision in my head of sitting at a ballpark watching a game with him. Like that's what popped into
Oh,
and I have the same
yeah.
thing with my grandson, who
Yeah.
is in Nashville, by the way, and that would be a nice thing to
Oh
have.
gosh, that'd be great. Yeah, and the memories of baseball, the things that I have learned over the years. When I posted my first website was sulphurdale.com. Now it's either that or baseballinnashville.com, takes you to the same spot. People started writing me and they told me about their experiences, and 99 times out of 100, it involved a grandfather, an uncle, a mom, a dad, father that took them to a game. They remember who they were with. They may not remember the final score, but they remember who they were with. And that's a very key thing, I think, about baseball that's a little unique about from other sports, don't you?
Absolutely. It's something you multi generations, especially in an original city like New York,
Yeah.
Boston, Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just part of your family history. So yes, fond memories. It's interesting, but I just think that the southern area. I've been doing a lot of business traveling in the last dozen years or so, and I've just been very impressed with many southern cities.
Yeah.
Okay, you drive through Philadelphia, it is a major league city. Boston, New York,
Yeah.
but when you go down south, everything seems like the trajectory is growing. I mean,
Yeah.
like just take Nashville, for instance. You're downtown Nashville and you head down Route 65. And off any exit, once you get down there heading towards Franklin, you see new shopping centers, new neighborhoods, new churches, new police stations, new fire stations, new schools being built. And it's just amazing how, the growth is
It is
something
amazing.
you don't have on the East Coast
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah,
But
I live east of town, 16 miles in Mount Juliet, and we're seeing it come our way too. So it's going east towards Knoxville, west towards Memphis. So I think it's and north towards Kentucky. Kentucky's only an hour away. So you see the draw that you're talking about that we would get here. Is Nashville the only? I know it's high on your list. It's high on my list. What other potential cities do you see now? One of my favorites is Portland because I know I stay in touch with a fellow who is like me, a historical advisor. He's a former scout. We worked together when we worked for New Era, and he's big on Portland and some of the things that they can offer. I think there was
right,
some
the
hope.
Portland Diamond Project, I think
That's
they
it.
were going to be one of the front runners a few years ago, and then things change from time to time. But they have a really nice stadium plan. They have
Yeah.
an advocacy group. We posted pictures. They were going to have a carousel, this historic carousel out there near the new ballpark. Um, that is definitely one of the featured things, and something that has happened to past expansions is if you go back to 1961, there's been an East Coast and kind of a West, or an East and a West geographical division,
Right.
and it just makes sense that if we're going to look for one in the West or Mountain Time Zone, or one in the East or Central Time Zone, and so I think Portland's chances have increased when Las Vegas is targeted. If that goes through, and I think it will, the Athletics end up in Las Vegas, then I think that helps Portland's chances. And
Right.
also, Salt Lake City has got a really solid ownership group Salt Lake City, as you know, they got the Olympics coming in a few years. They just got hockey, the
Yeah.
NHL,
Yeah.
and they've upgraded some of their other facilities. So that's another market that's probably a competitor of Portland in the West.
Right.
Other groups I mentioned in the MLB expansion Facebook group, we highlight Montreal,
Yeah.
Charlotte,
Right.
Raleigh, Austin, Texas,
Yeah.
Orlando, Florida. That the gentleman there, Mr.
Pat
Williams,
Pat
he
Williams.
died
Yeah. He passed
recently,
away.
but the organization is still trying to pursue something, and who knows, maybe their best bet would be if the Rays don't work it out in St. Petersburg, Orlando might be an option there. And then I think that, did I mention 8 of them?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Salt Lake City, yeah, I guess
Montreal.
I did.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, there's a group in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there's a group in Raleigh. And so you have 2 groups from the same state. They're advocates for MLB expansion. And it'll be interesting how that plays out. We've had that before where there's multiple ownership groups within a city and multiple cities within a state that have wanted expansion. And I'll give you an example. If I could briefly, in the early 1990s, the National Football League wanted to create, 2 new teams. Okay. They hadn't expanded since 1976. So all of these cities, got their best deal together, and they presented it in front of the owners of the National Football League. And they came down to 5 finalist markets. Okay. Now, Baltimore was one of them, but Baltimore had 3 ownership groups. And what do you do? At the last point, the governor picked one of them, but they were all really good ownership groups. But all 5 of these finalist cities ended up getting NFL teams within just like a 3-year period. Right. And that includes, the expansion teams went to Carolina and Jacksonville. The other teams that got relocated were the St. Louis, the Rams, Baltimore got the Ravens, and the Oilers ended up going to Tennessee.
Right.
They stopped at Memphis briefly. But right. the reason I bring that up is if we have a formal Major League Baseball expansion process and all the owners can see what these municipalities are offering, I think that may create more movement than just expansion. Right. Because the teams that don't get an expansion team, they still may have a very attractive package that may attract somebody else.
Well, let me ask you this question. Is the, and you mentioned NFL, is the NFL model what makes more sense for Major League Baseball, and is like 4 divisions per conference or per league? And if it does it matter where a team is in the East or West, Central Time Zone? I know Manfred left out the Central Time Zone the other day. I'm not sure that he just
I think that was a mistake because a lot of Tennessee is in the Eastern Time Zone. It's like, I'm not sure, but some point in the mountains, your clocks and your phones switch, but it's somewhere between Knoxville and Nashville.
It's about 90 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was just an East or West, but he did catch himself thinking mountain because, there's so many things like Salt Lake City and Las Vegas in the mountain time zone too.
Right.
So I'm sorry, what was
is the model, the NFL, is the model for Major League Baseball in the future, the NFL model?
I think so. Yes. there was a time that the leagues, the American League and the National League, had a president, and that kind of went away. I remember working with Dr. Bobby Brown, talking to him about the designated hitter when he visited Mr. Jacobs, the owner of the Orioles, and he said, "Well, I like the DH, but my wife doesn't. And the mailman's not sure," and that was his answer. You know, but the National League and the American League were very different. Now that they're all under the umbrella of Major League Baseball, and do we say we have an independent commissioner or a dependent commissioner? I don't know. But I think when you look at somebody who has more revenue, and the National Football League's revenue in 2023 was $18.7 billion. Major League Baseball the same year was 10.9. So I think they are looking at the winner, you know, and that's probably in any industry. You look at who's the front runner and you copy them. It just happens. Why reinvent the wheel? But yeah, it looks like we're going to their playoff formula, their division formula. And I think that's another, reason they're going to the 32 teams.
How impactful is what the people say? And let me give you an example. The Nashville Stars do one of the most wonderful things, I think, is publish a newsletter. They let people know it's baseball, obviously, but there are other things about the growth in the Nashville area and the state through entertainment stars. I mean, you name it, it's mentioned. The top restaurants in Nashville, all of those are throwback to what you said earlier about economics. But how does that swing with the commissioner or those who are talking to him? Is he interested in what people in certain areas say?
The answer is yes. I mean, from what I've seen, the owner of a baseball team is sitting in his box, and the people writing about him are staring at him in the press box. They are very sensitive to public opinion, very sensitive to public opinion. But the ironic thing here, this isn't their world. In other words, let's say you're the owner of the St. Louis Cardinals, right? Are your fans going to be coming up to you and say, "Hey, we want a team in Nashville"? So it's indirect. But if you're a fan of Major League Baseball and you want expansion, I say you got to reach out to the owners wherever they are.
Right.
Because what is delaying them? Is it the TV, the cable deals?
Yeah.
Is it the fact that they're really worried that these ballparks are going to fall through for the Rays and the A's? I mean, the commissioner said we're not going to do expansion until they get a new ballpark, the A's and the Rays. Well, in 2025, they both have new ballparks.
Mm-hmm.
The Rays will be at Steinbrenner Field, which is a beautiful facility. You've probably been there being a Yankees fan.
Yeah.
I think there are more Yankee fans in Tampa than there are Ray fans.
I agree with that.
Maybe not in St. Petersburg, but it's amazing. Now, as far as the A's go, there's a lot of anger there, and I truly understand it because I lived in Kansas City in 1967 when the Athletics announced their move. I remember angry adults then, and nobody wants to wish that on, Oakland. It's sad. They do have access to baseball because the Giants are there, and that's good. But they lost the Raiders,
right?
And now it looks like the Athletics are going to join them in Las Vegas.
Right.
So who's calling the shots? The commissioner works for the owners, and the owners do listen to the fans. So I don't think you necessarily have to just be passive and say, well, let's see what these people say. Owners listen to fans, and the fans pay the players' salary. They pay the owner's salary, and it is not in vain. So all the marketing that is done by the Nashville Stars, I get it. I get the newsletters. I read them. I think they definitely have an impact. And I posted recently that the Stars have changed their logo to the NS, and I like it. The guy from Nike designed it, and a lot of people have opinions, but I think I heard that you were getting a new brand and a new look, and no, I say keep it up. Absolutely, keep it up, because the commissioner has said we will get this resolved by my term, which ends in January of 2029, not in December of 2029. So that tells me that the last baseball season is 2028. And in 2028, if all goes as well, the Athletics and the Rays will both be in their new ballparks.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that that's the wishful thinking for most of us, is that it would happen sooner than later. I think the commissioner had said by 2030, or is at least how a lot of people interpreted that. Of course, there would be a new commissioner by then. But I'm also wondering how much the owners want the expansion fee in their treasury. That's another thing. And I thought maybe expansion would happen sooner coming out of COVID, when there were so many restrictions placed on attendance and other things. But baseball continues to grow. There are some naysayers that say baseball is old. And while I got a second, let me tell you this. I'm going to give you a testimonial real quick. I'm a season ticket holder for the Titans and the Predators. I'm not a soccer fan. There's a soccer team here, which is great. They sell out every time I think they have a game. But living here all my life, being involved with Nashville Old Timers Baseball, the money that we raise for scholarships, the baseball programs that are happening in this town, the foundation for baseball is stronger than the hockey and the football at the professional level than anything. And I think it's a better baseball town. That's saying a lot, but I think Nashville is a better baseball town. And I think that the owners should capitalize on that. Everybody wants to come to Nashville. You said the Cardinals fans, if they tell the Cardinals owners that they want to go to Nashville to see a game, everybody wants to come to Nashville. You can look at the stands for some of our teams and see what jerseys they're wearing. They're not all wearing Predators and not all wearing Titans jerseys. They're coming from all over. And with the growth of Nashville, people are coming from San Francisco. They're coming from New York City, where they watched a baseball team that they loved. And now they want their own team where they live, because they can't go to those games anymore. And that's impactful. People that are coming here are baseball fans. They're football fans, sure, but I think that's become a limited audience. And so now, with expansion or relocation, I think Nashville makes all kinds of sense. Does relocation is that the best option?
Well, I think it's always cleaner to start from scratch and create your own history, but relocation certainly would be faster. If some maybe a Florida team or some other market was struggling for whatever reason, that would certainly be faster. But expansion, there's something attractive about starting it from scratch and from the ground floor. And of course, the Nashville Stars have got the organization. The organizational chart is very, very impressive.
Right.
Just about not only baseball fans, but let's talk about the players for a moment, Skip.
Right.
The players' union wants expansion. They obviously want the jobs.
Yeah.
That would be, 50 new full-time jobs, plus, 80 new people on the roster, plus the minor leagues, plus all the other support positions, coaches, trainers, scouts. We're talking about a lot of economic activity, broadcasters, announcers. When they polled the players, they polled 100 Major League Baseball players recently, and they said, where do you want expansion to go? Well, 69% said Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And that's where maybe they want to live too, and the low taxes, and you get a lot of value for your money down there.
And the commissioner has to listen to that too, I think, doesn't he?
Absolutely. Well, like you said, the owners, they're projecting a fee of $2.2 billion for a buy-in fee.
Right.
And that's a lot of and times two, because there's two of them.
Right. That's right.
And then you have the situation where, what does this cost a team? Well, it costs maybe 2 or 3 players in the expansion draft. And that's all.
Yeah.
only
Right.
2 or 3 players in the
Right.
expansion draft, and then you get to protect so many.
Right.
And that's off of your 40-man roster. So there isn't really an expense for the team. But a lot of that, people talk about delusion of, talent, watering down the talent. And one thing I remember Branch Rickey said when he was trying to develop the Continental League, they said, well, you're just going to have a bunch of minor league players that are going to start.
Yeah.
He said, as long as it's competitive, it'll be exciting.
Exactly.
So no matter what level of baseball you go to, whether it's little league, high school, AAA, single A, double A, whatever, as long as it's competitive, it's exciting. And we find over the years that the first year of expansion, there may be some turmoil of statistics. Maybe the good players have the better years for that one season, like Roger Maris in 1961 or Maury Wills in 1962, when they inflated the league by 25%, because back then there were less teams. Here, they're only inflating the league by 6%, so it shouldn't do that. Plus, it all evens out. If you give a young guy the opportunity to play every day, he's going to rise to the level.
Of course he is. Yeah, and
And
look, there's an abundance of players that want to play, that will play. Of course, the money has something to do with it. One other thing that we really haven't talked about, I don't think there's been much discussion about it, but we have to remember with 2 new Major League Baseball clubs is 8 or 10 new minor league baseball clubs that are not existing to this day. That adds to the economic picture, I think, of baseball throughout the country. New Orleans doesn't have a team, for example. There's certain cities that, and either St. Louis, Portland doesn't have a minor league team, although I think there's one close by. It just adds to another dynamic to the possibility of expansion.
Right, that would be promotion for many cities around the country.
Exactly.
So as you drive around the country, you might go, this Greensboro, but that's a double A team. Or you kind of evaluate the municipality you're in by their level of baseball.
Right.
Are they double A, single A, triple A, whatever? And you're right, that would offer a better quality of play for many of those teams.
Sure.
I was a season ticket holder for the Aberdeen Ironbirds up here in Maryland. That's the team that's owned by Cal Ripken Jr. And the last time I went there, the quality of play was so much better. And I'm thinking, they elevated it, went from rookie league to high A.
Right.
And you could tell that, so if you're going to a triple A city, you're going to have higher quality of play than a double A city.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention one other thing about expansion in general, Skip, if I may.
Sure.
Sometimes you get some old timers that will say, well, I remember back when, we only had this many teams. And the assumption there is that for some reason, 1960 and earlier was optimal. Well, I don't think it was optimal. I think we didn't have enough teams back then.
I think you're right.
And think about the Pacific Coast League, which was actually classified as a higher league than AAA. They called it an open league.
It was.
In fact, the Pacific Coast League wanted to be classified as the third major league.
Yeah.
And they even played the extended season. They were going more than 162 games in the year back then. The Mexican League, they were trying to be major league status at one point in the 1940s and 50s. They had an owner that was buying up ex-major league players who were going down there and making more money.
Right.
And there's a famous story about Ferris Fain, the 2-time batting average leader for the Philadelphia Athletics, took a pay cut to go from the Pacific Coast League to the American League. And he's trying to negotiate with Connie Mack at the time. He said, Mr. Mack, I'm making double. No, this is better. This is major league,
Yeah.
Not to mention the Negro Leagues played until 1960.
No doubt. Yep.
So what there was maybe a need for expansion before 1961.
Right.
But certainly with the increases in population and the development of foreign national talent, there is an abundance of talent out there. And I say, give these cities an opportunity to apply for a major league team. And I think baseball's doing a better job now, Skip, of they're given between when you apply and they make the announcement you got the team to when you play your first game, they're giving you about 3 years.
Right.
At one time, they gave you only about 4 months.
Right.
If the California Angels and the Washington Senators were granted a team, I think in December of 1960, and they had guys out on the field in April of 61. They didn't have much time to prepare.
Well, and the argument that you don't have a place to play, for example, Nashville, well, we have a place to play if the A's can go to the Athletics, go there, and if go to Sacramento rather, and if Tampa can go to Tampa to play. I mean, they're playing in smaller ballparks. There are all kinds of options. Well, look, I'm gonna save some more for another time because I think this is fascinating. Let me applaud you for what you've done. Number one, you've grown that group. I don't know how long I've been on there, 6 months, maybe not that long, but I'm finding it fascinating. I love the opinions that people give. Nobody berate. Well, you get a few guys that say, oh, that doesn't make any sense. But still, I think people get an opportunity to say what they'd like to say. And I think you've opened that up for them. So good for you for that.
Well, thank you, Skip. And I'm glad you're a member, and I know we'll continue to grow.
I think you will. So thanks for joining me today. I'm really grateful, and we're gonna pick this up again at another time. How about that?
All right, Skip. Well, you have a good day.
I want to thank Bob Hale for being a part of my podcast today. If you want to look for his Facebook group page, it's just MLB Expansion, and you should be able to find it without any trouble. I also want to thank my producer, David Nipper, for all that he does to make this possible. And I want to wish each one of you a happy new year, and thanks for listening.